After having to wait so long, we finally got to see the release of the Black Clover movie on Netflix, and it is doing so well on the platform. It's getting the top 5 in most places in the world. It got second here in the US, and I believe it got number 1 in Japan, which is incredible to see. And I hear it's doing pretty well in theaters. That's also another good thing to hear as well. I'm not too familiar with other countries, but I hear basically the same thing. It is doing numbers over there, and that is fantastic. Hopefully this leads into more people getting into the franchise and becoming fans and just supporting the series overall. But now I want to talk about, well, the topic of the video, which is about the Wizard Kings. A lot of their backstories were revealed recently in volume 23.5, which was released in Japan. But thankfully, thanks to the efforts of Night Baron, Diab, and Piku, we managed to get a lot of the volume, if not all of it I believe, translated into English. I really do appreciate their efforts, and if you haven't followed them on Twitter, please make sure to do so right now. And while I do appreciate their efforts, I do hope that at some point we manage to get to see a physical release of this outside of Japan, because I would just love to own a physical copy and just manage to read it on my own whenever. Especially since I believe there's a special art by Tabata in the volume, so it's a shame that we don't have it in higher quality. So a physical release would definitely help that a lot. So here's hoping. But now moving on towards the backstories of the Wizard Kings, I thought it would be really fun to give their backstories a read, because I was doing my best to avoid any potential spoilers for the movie, so I didn't really read any of their backstories until recently, and that had me thinking, maybe there were others like me who avoided trying to see anything related to the movie, just out of fear of being spoiled. And that's a shame, because I feel like if I had read these before I saw the movie, it would have really made me connect with every Wizard King even more. Not that I wasn't already, because the performance of every Wizard King in the movie was fantastic, and, you know, they definitely made me feel for them at the end, but the novels definitely would have added even more to that. So, I decided it would be very interesting if I made a video just reading about their backstories, because maybe not everyone knows about them, and I thought I would share my thoughts about it as well, because these are really interesting. So I'm going to divide them up into separate sections. So if you already know about one of them but don't know about the other, then skip to the one you're most interested in hearing about. Or you could just listen to about all of them. It's up to you. I added it specifically for every type of person out there. If you want to hear all of it or some of it, it's up to you. So now let's get started with the main man himself, Conrad, whose age is apparently 35 at the time of sealing, which made him currently 45 throughout the events of the movie. Now, leading towards his backstory, Conrad was born into a noble family, but due to his thief life unlocking magic, he was shunned by those around him, leading to a lonely childhood. As he grew older, he discovered the true value of key magic, but as people feared its power, the gap between him and those surrounding him was never bridged. Conrad joined the Magic Knights, where he met a young Julius and caring young woman from the Forsaken Realm, Lavilia. Conrad learnt to trust these two, and as a result began to open up to those around him. Conrad kept gaining achievements together with his companions and eventually became the Magic Knights captain of the squad White Serpent. Conrad's life was going smooth while married to his vice captain, Lavilia. One day, he received a mission for his squad. However, it turned out to be a trap set by the royal faction, who hated him. Devastated at the loss of Lavilia and dozens of members of his squad during the mission, Conrad became consumed with anger. Despite Julius's desperate attempts to persuade him, Conrad's darkness deepened. To eradicate discrimination and prejudice, and build a country where everyone can laugh together, Conrad, now the Wizard King, aimed to achieve his ideals. But he was unable to bring about change, and his despair only deepened. The only way to change this country is to, quote, truly rebuild it. The dangerous thoughts in his mind were not subdued, and he immersed himself in researching ancient magic tools. Eventually, he stole the natural treasure, quote, Imperial Sword, and started a rebellion. However, he got sealed away by Julius and company in the midst of his aspirations. And man, that is an extremely sad backstory. Conrad was completely fine. He had a wife, he had a wonderful squad, but then everything got ruined thanks to the royals. And, you know, that gives us a really good understanding about his motivations and why he did the things he did. Of course, the way he went around trying to do them was obviously not a really good way to do it at all. But I understand how he feels, like he lost his wife and he lost his whole squad. And we know that the royals are completely corrupt. We saw that with the elves. We saw that with what happened to Asta after he went to trial for having a devil. We know how the royals are. We've seen that. It's evident throughout the whole series. But Conrad was far too consumed by his own anger and despair to really think logically about how to truly bring about change. Which makes him a really good antagonist for Asta in the movie. Which I won't go too into because this isn't really a review of the movie. But I will say it was all executed very well. And props to Tabata along with the rest of the people involved with the film because they did a really good job showing that throughout the movie. Moving on to the next Wizard King, we have Edward Avalache. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. And his age, right when he died, was 66. Now, moving on to his backstory. Edward was a man with a promising future, but he had no interest in pursuing a career and spent most of his time in church listening to the sermons of priests. When he learned of the harsh conditions faced by those without magic power, he decided to leave his home and become a priest, taking in orphan children and caring for them. 10 years later, in the midst of intensifying war with the Diamond Kingdom, a sudden tragedy happened. Edward's orphanage fell victim to the enemy raid, and the children lost their lives. For the first time in his life, Edward used magic with all of his might to destroy the enemy, and decided to join the Magic Knights to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Edward, who's generous and always there for the weak, is well liked by the people, and eventually became the Wizard King. However, royalty and nobility strongly opposed his aim of eliminating the boundaries between the royal, common, and forsaken realms. Through their scheming, Edward was stripped of his position as Wizard King. Having abandoned his faith in God, Edward formed a resistance to seek revenge against the royals and nobles who plotted against him. He continues to eliminate those in power, believing that it is the only way to save the corrupted heart. However, this was not long-lived, and he was eventually captured and executed. And man, this one is extremely heartbreaking. It wasn't bad enough that, he himself got executed, but his entire orphanage had to fall prey to the Diamond Kingdom's raid. We're talking about orphan children who died. He had to witness that himself in person. Like, that would make anyone go insane. But throughout the entire movie, he mostly kept to his composure. Of course, he sought revenge, and he allied towards Conrad's goals. But compared to the rest of them, he clearly had a cool head. But yeah, this is just tragic. Like, having to lose orphan kids just like that, and having to abandon his own faith in God. Like, he gave up his own religion, he gave up on everything, and he rose up and ranked up to become the Wizard King, only to be executed afterwards. This is just incredibly depressing, and it makes me really feel for Edward and not just the movie, but just overall. I guess that's why I really enjoyed his parts of the film, especially towards the end. It was all very well done. With something like everything that happened to him in his life, you can't really blame the man for having to join up with Conrad and wanting to bring about change, even if it was by force in the Clover Kingdom. Just really tragic. Poor Edward. Now moving on to the next Wizard King, we have Jester Garadros, age 23, at least the time of his death. His backstory goes as follows. Jester was born into a noble family and grew up without any hardships, and joined the Magic Knights. There, he met Tenor, who came from a remote village near the Diamond Kingdom, and Raid, from the Common Realm. Despite their different social status and background, the three of them strangely got along very well, pushing each other to improve and grow together. Shortly after, Jester is appointed a Magic Knights captain. Tenor's village is then invaded by the Diamond Kingdom. However, the kingdom cannot make a move to protect a remote village. Jester and company go off on their own to defeat the enemy nevertheless, but Tenor lost his life in the battle. Jester, who achieved a great success as a captain, has finally risen to the rank of the Wizard King. One day, Tenor's home village is invaded, again by the enemy. Jester rushes to the rescue, but it turns out to be a trap set by the Raid, a spy for the enemy, in order to assassinate Jester. After losing both Tenor and Raid, Jester, in order to prevent such further tragedies, came up with a solution, quote, conquest of the four kingdoms. Despite being called, quote, Mad King, due to his ambitions initially, he gradually earned the support of the people. However, he fell into the trap of the royal faction who disliked his growing influence, and he lost his life in the process of achieving his goal. Now, Jester's is really interesting because after having to lose one of his allies and having another one betray him, he just completely went mad. Of course, that's why he was called the Mad King. But what I find interesting the most is his solution, conquest of the four kingdoms. So I'm guessing he wanted to be the one to rule over all the kingdoms, Heart, Spade, Clover, and of course the Diamond Kingdom. But I can only imagine how he met his end, because in the movie, without really spoiling anything, Jester was shown to be extremely powerful. So I can only imagine what type of trap they had to set him in to take him down. Jester was really something else in the movie. So it really must have taken a lot to take this man down. But yeah, another very tragic backstory. And now we move on to the final Wizard King, Princia Funnybunny, whose age was 22 at the time of her death. An interesting fact about her, in case you didn't know, apparently the writers suggested making her a young child, but Tabata rejected the idea because he wanted her to be a young woman, and he felt that making her a child would not be a good idea since becoming a Wizard King requires you to rank up, so it would make more sense for a Wizard King to be a young adult rather than a young child. And I honestly respect that decision. But moving towards her backstory, Princia is born as the eldest child of a fallen noble family. The family hoped to lead a peaceful life and to rule their land in such a way, but greedy nobles took possession of the family land. Under the relentless harassment, Princia decided to fight to protect her family and her people. After receiving her grimoire, Princia was recruited into the Blue Roses Magic Knight Squad. Being undefeated, her fame grew day by day, and in order to strengthen their influence, the royal faction half-forcibly installed her as the Wizard King. As the war with the Diamond Kingdom reached its final stages, Princia's family and people from her land were taken hostage by the enemy. However, the generals, fearing that Princia would leave the front lines, decided not to tell her this. Thus, Princia lost something precious in exchange for victory. Princia, exploding with anger towards her strategist, got stripped of her title as Wizard King, and imprisoned with her magic sealed. The village where she was imprisoned got attacked one day by bandits, whom she decided to fight despite her magic being sealed, thus sacrificing her life in the process. And here we have just another tragic backstory. I get it, they really wanted to win against the fight towards the Diamond Kingdom, but at the cost of her own family and the people of her land? That's just really cruel. But I imagine stuff like that probably, or I guess definitely happens IRL. But having to read about it here and seeing what Princia went through, like, I can't blame her either. She basically got betrayed, and she lost everyone close to her. Like, nobody told her about anything. Was victory really worth it at the end? And then to make things worse, despite the fact that they won, and, and her justifiable rage, they just sealed her away. Like, she was the Wizard King, but they didn't care, because she tried to rebel back at them, for them not being able to tell her what happened to her family and people of her land. They just stripped her away and just put her into some village, just to die. Just really sad. But yeah, that does it for all of their backstories. So I'm gonna try to close this out with some final thoughts. First of all, like I've said a bunch of times, all of their stories are tragic. All of them have lost somebody, or just groups of people, or even a land of people. And that caused them all to just really fall into despair and rage, causing them to want to rebel against the kingdom that gave them the title of Wizard King in the first place. So, the rage is completely understandable. Like, I understand why they wanted to work with Conrad, why they wanted to overtake the kingdom and change it, in their eyes, for the better. But that doesn't make their actions correct, as we saw in the movie and what Asta tried to do to fight against them. But at the same time, you know, like I get it. I feel extremely bad for them. And that's another thing. Tabata, when it comes to writing backstories, he does such a good job. He definitely makes you feel for these characters. Like, whenever you see a backstory in the manga, you know that's gonna hit hard. And it hits hard here in the volume as well. Like, this might just be like a 0.5, like a half kind of thing going on, but that doesn't change the fact that all of the Wizard King's backstories are very, very well written and very tragic as well. So props to Tabata, as well as anyone else involved in the movie, as well as the writers, for doing such a good job presenting these characters in such a emotional way. And another thing I've noticed, and I'm sure all of you have noticed as well if you've been listening, is that the Diamond Kingdom has played a very large role in quite of their backstories, which is interesting because we haven't really learned too much about the Diamond Kingdom themselves in quite a while. So I hope this begins to bring a change, because I would really like to learn even more about the Diamond Kingdom as well. And that also makes me remember about that panel from like a long time ago where it showed that silhouette character from the Diamond Kingdom. We have yet to find out who that is. And I really hope we get to learn who that is soon, because, like I said, when it comes to Diamond, like, these backstories are probably the most we're gonna get for Diamond in general. And I hope that's not the case. I want to learn more about it in the manga itself. So maybe, hopefully, this is a teaser for things to come. But at the same time, this also makes me kind of happy what Xenon did to the Diamond Kingdom, because, hell, they deserved it. But, yeah, and, you know, there's also still the thing about Mars. I really hope we see Mars again, because we haven't seen him in forever. But, aside from that, I would love to learn even more about Diamond. I want to know who that shadowy figure is. And I really hope Tabata shows us more about that in the manga. And I feel like he will, but just not right away. So we're just going to have to continue to wait. And then there's also the question about the Wizard Kings as well, because I know this is a popular theory, and I don't really think it's a theory. I think it's bound to happen, and that's the fact that we're probably going to see these Wizard Kings again in the final arc, and we're going to see them as paladins. And the idea of that kind of sounds frightening to me, because if you've seen the movie, the Wizard Kings are, well, they're powerful as hell. And add that to them being paladins, that's gonna make them basically almost unstoppable. But, you know, at the same time, it would be kind of hyped to see the rematch between Mereoleona and Princia as well. So, you know, that would be kind of hype. She did say she could go for more rounds, so maybe we could potentially see those rounds in the final arc. But, yeah, overall, very interesting backstories, very well written, and like I said, we could potentially see them as paladins again, and I definitely wouldn't mind seeing that, despite, I guess, the power creep that would happen if they were to return. But yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this, and if you made it this far, I really appreciate you having to listen to me talk about their backstories for like nearly 20 minutes. But yeah, what did you guys think? Let me know whose backstory you felt the saddest for, which one was your favorite, who was your favorite Wizard King in the movie. Just share the details down below. Do you think they're going to come back in the manga, or are they not going to come back? Just share all your thoughts below. But that'll do it for me. Thank you for having to listen to me talk about this, and peace out, everyone.